Shalom everybody. We are continuing with where we left off in Likutey Halakhot, section Orach Chaim Halakhot Birkat Hoda'ah, the laws of the blessings of Thanksgiving. Discourse number 6, paragraph 24, based on Likutey Moharan lesson 24. And before we go on, an introduction is needed, a Kabbalistic introduction is needed to just better understand Rav Nosson as he's getting into the concept of Jacob's ladder. The idea of a ladder is just so unbelievable. Even as a child, I felt awkward. What's this ladder? When you see a ladder in life, it's like for a repair, to fix something. It's not nice to have a ladder up. You know, when you have a ladder like somewhere, you have a building, you have ladders around it, that means that it's under construction. So what's the idea of a ladder being part of Yaakov's dream? And the ladder is not something proper. You know, normally you have like a pathway or like, you know, a long red carpet, everything, something which is like achid, one unit. But here that it's broken up. There's like the step, empty space, step. It loses its texture of niceness. It's something like it's under repair. That's the idea. And the truth is, that's what a ladder is representing. To explain the Kabbalistic idea, there's what's called the infinite light. Okay, the infinite light is Hashem's infinite light. However, because of the perspective of the recipients, the difference in perspectives of people in receiving the infinite light, because of the recipients, their vessels, so commensurate to where they're coming from and their perspective, the infinite light will change for that person. Even though it's one thing, it's an endless light, God's light, but because of the person perceiving it, the infinite will give a different perspective and a shape to each different person differently, okay? So for example, you can't compare the guy who grew up in Western North American culture and movies and the Bee Gees and Woodstock and everything, and from there to perceive the infinite light, to the guy who grew up in Eastern Europe, in the shtetl, in a little village, and his whole life was just sacred, and Kedusha and Tahara, and always in a little constricted perspective of the worldly exposure. So you can't compare their experience in the infinite light, besides the difference in their neshama, number one, but also where they're coming from. The vessels they have will determine how strong of an exposure they'll receive. So for example, the person who's very much into this world, if he's given a strong exposure of the infinite light, it will make him crash. So because he's coming from, like I said, a Woodstock, Bee Gees, movie, Hollywood, very secular, physical perspective, so the infinite light will have to constrict itself even more when exposing itself to this person, because if not, the person will just blow up. It'll be too much for him. It's too much for him because he's coming from such a physical perspective, a materialistic perspective. So very care is needed. Very carefully care is needed, if you want to say like that, to give a person this light in a format that he can use it. So on one hand, it's more limited, but on the other hand, because it's requiring a stronger force of the infinite to constrict itself to such a person, so it's coming from a higher level. So on one hand, the person who's far can say, hey, you know, wow, I'm deserving of a higher level of infinite light, because it's a higher level to constrict itself for someone as low as myself. So wow, I'm deserving of a higher level. But on the other hand, the reason why this is happening because you're sick, because the person is very low and far, so he needs a higher doctor, a higher level of holiness to be able to constrict its light in morsels that he can handle. As opposed to the guy who's working his whole life in davening and learning and davening and learning, he can be exposed to a greater level of the infinite light without its limitations, okay? Because he has shown that he's more into spirituality anyways already, okay? So with that said, there's many levels of exposure of the infinite light, which is called the Keter. There's levels. There's the highest level of infinite light above all mankind, and then there's personal experiences of infinite light throughout their lifetime, each experience at a different level. Even though it's the infinite light, and it's coming from one source that's that's achid, that's solid in one mass. Nonetheless, because of the person where he's holding in his life and the stages of progression in spirituality, that will determine how much of an exposure of the infinite light. So there's other levels. So in this sense, it's like a ladder. The ladder has a step and then a gap, and then another step and a gap. That's what we said before. It's like a repair scenario as opposed to just like a straight pathway. We think like a pathway going up to heaven. Right? It's now, there's even stairs, stairway to heaven, right? There's stairs, but they're connected. Here, a ladder is like you take a step and then there's a gap, and another step, a gap. So this, Rav Nosson is going to show, is reflecting how a person in his life, he has a step, which means an accomplishment, a perception, a reaching something, and then that empty void, and then another step, empty void. That's the idea of a ladder. And it's like a repair. It's not nice. Even though, if you think about it in the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, where it talks about the amazing Simchat Beit HaShoeva, and they had these ladders with children, young children going up, lighting these beautiful, big torches and candelabras that were hanging in the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, to celebrate. So it says ladders, but the ladders there was understood for these young children that you can't have big, heavy adults going up and lighting these menorah. They would send children who were skinny and small on these ladders. So there, the ladders was for the something higher, but in general, ladders is like a sign of repair. It's like you don't, when you see ladders, like we said, outside a building, that means they're doing restorations, they're repairing and everything. Okay, so you don't have in a shul ladders and everything. That's not nice. You have stairways and everything. The progression is made nice and beautified, but a ladder is showing growth, progression, and stop. Growth and stop, and it's showing that, okay? With that said, now we can understand what Rav Nosson is saying now on the next verse, the third verse, opening Parashat Vayitzeh, where we left off. The actual dream of Yaakov Avinu. So Rav Nosson says like this: Vayachalom vehine sulam mutzav arza verosho magia shamayma v'chule. So Rav Nosson is quoting the verse from the third opening verse of Parashat Vayitzeh, which is what we're dealing with. And again, even though it's in Parashat Vayitzeh, the message is relevant any time of the year. And before I forget, always, if these classes inspire you, please share them on your status, on whatever you can. Get the word out of the light and the message from Rabbi Nachman and Rav Nosson, which enlightens people, B'ezrat Hashem. So again, the verse reads like this: Vayachalom. So we saw in the previous verse and the previous class, and that Yaakov went to sleep. Now he's dreaming. Vayachalom, he's dreaming. He's in dream mode. And what does he see in his dream? Veine sulam mutzav arza, and he sees a ladder which is mutzav, which is fixed. Mutzav yatziv, it's fixed arza, on the earth. In other words, the bottom of the ladder is fixed on the earth. V'rosho hamagia hashamayma, and the head, the top of the ladder, is reaching up to the heavens. V'chule, etc. Okay. This is the dream, the famous dream of Jacob's ladder. What is he seeing? What's going on here? Shira'a sheze klal avodat ha'adam b'zeh olam. He saw that the following, what he's going to explain with Nosson, which we already tapped into many times already, this is the general purpose of mankind's work and devotion and creation. Why Hashem put him in the world, in this world? What is the mission, the job of mankind in this world? The idea of the bottom of the ladder fixed firm on the earth, which is like the beginning point to climb the ladder, that a person has to descend into this physical, corporeal, physical existence. Shesham achizat hechalei atmorot, okay? Ulevarer misham v'chule. That here, in other words, there, which is really here, in this physical world, is where the stronghold of this concept called the exchanged chambers takes place. This world fools everybody. It's called olam, a concealment, because the job of this world is to conceal the real reality, and it does a good job. The Hechal HaTmorot, the exchange chambers, which is run by the evil, the side of evil, manages successfully to fool the majority of the world. That's already 99% of the world. And from the Jewish population, the majority are also fooled and lost. And even those who know of the truth, even they have to fight the difficulty to clarify the real truth, the real reality of life. Okay? So this world is called the exchange of chambers. The way the Yetzer Hara fools people is by exchanging right with wrong, good with evil, pure, impure, holy, unholy, light with darkness, okay? Happiness with sadness, that's the main thing, okay? He does a job by exchanging. That's why people are miserable in this world. Well, that's the challenge of this world, is because of the exchange. Nothing is clear. There's frustration, confusion, due to the Hechalat Murot, the chamber of exchanges. Okay? And the job of mankind is dafka, we're sent specifically into this world, and to clarify from here, etc., because this idea I mentioned earlier, to clarify from here, the holiness that's trapped, that's our mission. By doing mitzvot besimcha, which means, in other words, seeing through the trick, seeing the real reality of life, that the real reality is you have every reason in the world to be happy. That's the real reality of life. You have every reason to be happy. It's the Yetzer Hara making you worried about this and worried about that and this and that, and making you so upside down and preoccupied and miserable because of all the things just trying to sidetrack you. Fine. You succeed to be happy in serving Hashem, meaning you see through the tricks of the Yetzer Hara. I see you. You're able to see right through and bypass it and be happy. Okay? And that's how we elevate from here, from this world, any holiness trapped. And that's our mission. That's what he's saying here. This is the reason why a person was sent here, to face the challenges of the Hechalat Murot, the exchange of chambers, that's what it's called, and to elevate from here, etc., the holiness trapped here, right? And then when you extract the holiness trapped here, and then to go up in all the stages, he said, if you remember, based on this lesson, Likutey Moharan lesson 24, first stage is extraction from the domain of evil into holiness. So the first stage is to bring it to the level of the legs, what's called the legs, where the mitzvah you do gains momentum. There's movement, spiritual movement. That's the legs. To elevate then from that level to the hands, which is activating bracha, blessings, due to the momentum of the mitzvah, due to doing them besimcha. Number 3 is once you activate the blessing, to reach for the blessing of the mind, blessing of da'at, chokhmah bina da'at, to fill the blessing, which is the hands, with intellect. Okay? And then from there, that's the next stage is to get to the Keter, which requires emunah. We didn't go into it at all right now, because Rav Nosson is also not going into it. Let's go back to the point. But these are the stages of elevation and the mission of man, to reconnect to the Keter after collecting all the booty and bounty found in this world. Okay? So through all this, you actually are going up a ladder whose head, the top of the ladder, reaches heaven. And a ladder, like we said, it's stages. There's a stage of accomplishment. That's the actual footing on the ladder, the actual shliva. And it is the gap of nothingness, of empty space, until you get to the next one. Meaning you have to pass stages. There's always stages here, okay? So the idea of the top of the ladder, the final stage of the ladder, Rav Nosson mentioned this concept, which is a very deep Kabbalistic concept. He mentioned earlier in paragraph 23. This is referring to the Prisa Ha'elyona, the upper separation. Because we said already, the Keter Ein Sof has many levels depending where you're holding in life. When you reach the very top, Bezat Hashem, which is the goal of every Jew, you reach what's called the upper Keter, the upper exposure, the maximum capacity exposure that a human being can perceive of the infinite light. That's considered the final stage, the final shliva, the final, level of the actual ladder, the final one, the top one. That's why the Rosh Mageh Shamayma, the top of the ladder reaches the heaven. Okay? This is the idea, this deep concept of the Prisa. It's called a Prisa because it's like a wall. Because above the ladder, again, you have another gap leading to in the top of the ladder, right? You can't stand on the top. You're holding on the top. There's like one level, but above that there's still the next gap, and that's called the prisa, the infinite light that's spread out to block you at that highest level. Okay, that's how life is, like a ladder, step by step, darkness, step, a gap of darkness, again a step. That's how it is in perception and advancement in life. Okay. And this is the idea of the Keter, like we said. And it's through them, through these stages of the ladder, that a person perceives, and ultimately the Rosho, because the verse is emphasizing that the top of the ladder reached heaven. Like the verse is saying the bottom of the ladder and the top of the ladder, and doesn't focus at all on in between. Because yes, ultimately, the beginning point and the final point is what we have to be focusing on. And every stage of the intermittent part of the ladder is basically receiving from the top of the ladder. The top of the ladder, the highest level, is influencing your exposure of infinite light at every stage on this ladder that you're going up through in life. Okay? And it's just an amazing point. There's what's called Hechal HaTmurot, the exchange chambers. And he uses, Rabbi Nachman, the same wording in this lesson for the positive side, which is causing to create 9 chambers. Tet Hechalin, again the word chambers. It's like chamber versus chamber. There's the chambers of evil that try to mix you up and get you all messed up in confusion. And to counter that are the 9 chambers of the intellect, which is your force to bypass the exchange chambers. In other words, not by being happy and maintaining that simcha, you create 9 vessels, 9 chambers to receive within them the infinite light at your level, wherever you are in the middle of the ladder. And that counters the attack of the exchange chambers, again the word chamber, which traps people through sadness. All right, we'll continue Bezat Hashem in the next class. These concepts are just amazing how they relate to everybody in life.